Next talk by Mark Roberts. He's a third-year PhD student. He's actually supported by the IKIS, so the EPSRC with the industrial partner, and this is closely related to the healthcare projects. We have three at least active projects on segmentation. Hopefully, Mark will give you some sort of overview related to the stuff we are doing in Liverpool.
Okay, hi, I'm Mike Roberts. Thank you for the invite. So yeah, I'm going to discuss a new robust convex selective segmentation model we've got in 2D and now in 3D as well. So the outline is I'll discuss what image segmentation actually is, how we solve it using this variational approach, the distance function we choose to incorporate in our model, and then we look at how we can actually, like the industrial applications of this, it needs to be robust for parameters, so a user doesn't have to do much tuning. Then give some results, and then applications of the model and future work. So what is image segmentation? We're just looking for a contour which separates foreground objects from background objects. That's simply it, really. We have two types of segmentation. We have global segmentation, which is moving all objects in the image to the foreground. And then selective segmentation requires some user input to indicate either through markers for objects they want to segment or anti-markers say they don't want those objects. So in this case, the user puts in a couple of object marker points and they want the square and the circle segmented. So that's the aim, really. This kind of motivational examples within healthcare, we're looking to segment individual cells in the image rather than every cell there, and we want to segment just one lung rather than both lungs, or we want to segment just one organ rather than all the organs. So we work in a variational framework, so just as a sort of setting for this, we actually model the boundary of the object as a level set, so our solution comes out when we do our minimization problems as a binary image between 0 and 1, and our boundary of the object is around 0.5 we can set it, but we can set it to any value within 0 and 1. Foreground is 1 and background goes to 0. So the general framework for segmentation, or the convex segmentation models we'll deal with, are we're doing this minimization over 0, 1. We have a regularizer, which just ensures that it's a well-posed problem. An intensity constraint, so we want to make sure that the segmentation boundary goes around an object of similar intensity. So when we're looking for a lung, it just has the lung intensities. It doesn't include any other intensities. And then a distance constraint. So when we've got the user indicates where the object roughly is with their markers, or indicates where it isn't with anti-markers, and we should be able to use that information somehow. So this is the kind of general framework with the sort of pieces that everyone has used before. So for various regularizers, intensity constraints and distance constraints, and the ones with the stars are the ones that we'll be using. So a weighted TV, an edge-weighted TV regularizer, a proposed fitting term that we've not actually sort of given a name to yet, and then we're using a geodesic distance term. So I'll talk about the distance term and the intensity constraint, but leave the regularizer. So the distance function we're going to use is geodesic distance. So when the user indicates a marker point here, we solve this PDE here, and so it's a kind of iconal equation with an edge map here, and then we can obtain a distance map like this. This is normalized geodesic distance. So here the distance is around 0, and then in the other objects it's 1. So it's saying basically for any other objects in the image they're far away. So it's a contrast with Euclidean distance, which other authors have used. So in our setting, we think the normalized geodesic distance is more representative for the image of how far away pixels actually are. So for example, within this circle here, we would say this pixel isn't actually that far away because it's of the same intensity, it's within the same object. Therefore, we would say it's a smaller distance, whereas Euclidean distance might put it quite far away. So within this geodesic model, we tested it against various competitor models. The RADA and Liu models don't include explicit distance term or a locality term, so ended up giving segmentations quite far away. They're more intensity based. And then the other ones were Spencer and Nguyen, which gave roughly, I would say they kind of fail on this tough image, whereas the geodesic one does a more reasonable job. And then another challenging one was this heart one. So we've got marker points there in red, anti-marker points there in blue, and we're just trying to get the lower portion of the heart. And again, we for the RADA model is intensity driven, so we get a failure. The Liu model does much better here, and then the geodesic one again does quite well. So we've now looked at the distance term itself, and then we're going to look at fixing the regularizer and fixing the distance term, and we're just going to focus on the intensity terms. We want to compare the robustness of each model to variations in the parameters. So when you're the user of this model, you can, if say we fix mu as 1, you get to vary lambda and you get to vary theta. And we want to say what quality, are we getting a quality segmentation for a vast range of parameters or not? So we'll do that for a variety of intensity constraints. So first of all, we'll just say what the quality measure actually is. So we use the Tanimoto or Jaccard coefficient, so which basically looks at the overlap between a ground truth and your segmentation result and gives a number between 0 and 1. 1 is a perfect segmentation and 0 is a failure. So as we vary various parameters, we can see how we got different segmentation results, and the Tanimoto coefficient goes up and up and up as this gets closer to the ground truth. And then once we've got this measure between 0 and 1, we can plot parameter heat maps. And these look at all combinations of lambda and theta in that model, and we give a value for the Tanimoto coefficient. And so the more green there is in our heat plot, the better it is, because it means we're getting perfect segmentations or good segmentations for a vast range of combinations of parameters. So it's not showing up very well here, but we're looking at this CT of a lung, and we put a very small marker set in, and this is the ground truth. And then we compare for intensity terms of various other competitor models to our proposed intensity fitting terms, and we have quite a good range of green. It comes about to here on the slides, whereas for the other models we have a much smaller robustness. So it's saying, and also the range for a good segmentation or a reasonable one is much larger. So you can basically fix your parameters to anything, and then you can slowly work towards optimizing them quite quickly to get back to this range. And similarly for this one, we get the same results, that the green extends to about here, whereas for LCV and GAV is much smaller. So this is a very practical and very easy to use model for a user who just can pick some parameters. In testing we can always fix a lambda and theta, and it works for every CT image. And then some results for 2D and 3D. So we've got our 2D examples, so cyst within a lung, blood cell, and then this one was, so with these really complicated ones, so this one we've not really got much of a boundary, but we can use anti-markers, and they're not on here annoyingly, but they would be just around the edge there, stop it spilling out. And again for here we put anti-markers along this boundary here, and markers within the liver, but we can get quite good segmentation results from it. And then in 3D, this is an artificial example. So we've got a GUI, so you just click a couple of points as a user, and you can get very accurate segmentations. And again for this one, so this used 16 points. We can now get the same result using 5 points, using the geodesic fitting term, which I think is reasonable for a radiologist to click 5 points within a scan, and we've got the GUI, so it's very simple for them to do very quick. So to get this quality of result, I think is pretty good. So the applications in the future work. So we can use this model for this semi-automatic medical image segmentation. So we only require a little bit of input from the radiologist at the moment. For tracking objects, so I think I've got an example here that on the first slice you pick the point and then it segments it, and it can use that as an initialization and keep going for segmenting that one. But then we've also got a more practical thing, which would be a medical cell tracking, and you can just kind of follow a cell around. We can use it for object identification, so once you've segmented an object, you can then look to classify what that object is based on its shape, and for obtaining training data for machine learning. So we already use this for, we've got a machine learning code, and we need lots of training data, lots of lungs to go into it, and so we use this as an initial guess to then give to the radiologist for them to perfect. And then we've got fast multi-grid solvers in 2D and 3D for this model, so we can solve, we can obtain these segmentations very, very fast now. And then future work would be to fully automate the point selection, so that would probably involve, again, machine learning to identify where is a lung in the body roughly, and that can pick the marker points, and then we wouldn't need to be involved at all. For inhomogeneous objects would be quite good, so to have a fitting term, an intensity fitting term that's robust when the intensity of the object isn't the same inside, and then considering other regularizers. So Euler Elastica, but it's very hard to solve at the moment, and then anything else. So we've considered the intensity terms and the distance terms, but not yet the regularizers. I think that's everything. Yeah.
So how is the algorithm sensitive to user interactions?
It's very robust to it. So we've got a test we did of, we randomized 1,000 user inputs of 3 or 4 marker points, and then compared the results, and the box plots were all very good, all getting about 0.95 to 1 as a Tanimoto coefficient. So it's very robust, we'd say, to the user's input. But I think it comes from the geodesic term. Wherever you put your marker points, your geodesic map looks basically the same, because your edges are the key thing in your distance.
Can you say something about the connection to the machine learning approaches? So you said that your method could be used either to collect training data for machine learning,
Yeah.
but it could also be the other way, that you use machine learning, for instance, to automate the point selection.
Yeah. So
Do you think in the long term, would it make sense to think about like hybrid approaches where you use machine learning, like CNN or something to?
So that's what we already do for so like for these examples, I'm using the variational model to obtain training data, and then for the hospital to go through, and they would fine tune where the segmentation isn't correct, or where at the bottom or the top if it has missed bits off, or if there's a tumor or something, they'll
What
factor
about
it in.
the other way?
So
Because I guess the learning-based approaches currently often don't have good ways of incorporating constraints, like that you don't want to leak and so on. I guess your variational approach is nice, that you can put geometric constraints or any prior knowledge you want.
yeah.
Do you think it would make sense to add them on top of the machine learning output?
Potentially, yes. Yeah, I think we were talking about this the other day, actually, about trying to combine the machine learning and the variational into one framework. But yeah, I would agree.
Thanks again.